Let's turn to your latest piece of the New York Times, which carries the headline, "For Trump, domestic adversaries are not just wrong, they are evil." And you write in part this: "Evil is a word getting a lot of airtime in the second Trump term. It is not enough anymore to dislike a journalistic inquiry or disagree with an opposing philosophy. Anyone viewed as critical of the president or insufficiently deferential is wicked. The Trump administration's efforts to achieve its policy goals are not just an exercise in governance, but a holy mission against forces of darkness. If Mr. Trump's adversaries are not just rivals, but villains, then he can rationalize going further than any president has in modern times. More than any other recent predecessor, Mr. Trump has encouraged the notion that his presidency is a battle of good versus evil, embracing images of himself as a king, a pope, and a Superman." Very well written there, Peter. And I think it's interesting. First of all, taking that viewpoint eliminates the possibility of any moments of national unity, even in the face of tragedy. And certainly there are moments where an American president should be called to bring a whole nation together. Trump has never seemed particularly inclined to do that. But to piggybacking on what John Heilemann said a moment ago, if Trump is framing everything as black and white, good versus evil, suddenly right now he's saying some of his own supporters fall into the category of political opponent and mortal foe.
Well, that's the risk, right? Exactly. He frames everything in these up or down, good or bad, white or black kind of terms, and it's all or nothing. There's not room for disagreement. There's not room for compromise. And look, if your enemy, if your rival is actually an enemy, if your rival is actually evil, and that's a term he's using more and more these days about domestic opponents and journalists, then it can justify all kinds of things. It can justify arresting them. It can justify taking away their citizenship. Rosie O'Donnell is being threatened with losing her citizenship for the crime of criticizing Donald Trump. The other day, the president said about Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security under President Biden, that, yeah, maybe we ought to have him criminally prosecuted because his immigration policy was so bad. That's a different order that we have seen from previous presidents. Now, you hear, of course, Trump's allies will point out that his opponents have gone down the same road, that they call him all kinds of names, fascist, Nazi, they compare him to Hitler and so forth. And there's no question that the national discourse has become more and more corrosive over the years. And that's something that Trump has ushered in and encouraged and brought to the fore. Now, whether he gets to the point where he calls his own base evil, that's a whole other level. That's an escalation. Right now, he's saying, in effect, that they're dupes. They're dupes from the Democrats, he says. They're dupes for believing the kind of conspiracy theories that he and some of his people have been advancing over the last few years. But we're really in a different era when it comes to presidential discourse. I write in the piece, I remember back when George H.W. Bush was president, he got in trouble in 1992 for calling Bill Clinton, who was running against him, a bozo. That's a different kind of four-letter word. And he actually apologized for it because he thought it was beneath the dignity of the office. Well, that tells you how much has changed.
Yeah, much has changed. And you're right to underscore Trump's role in corroding the language, but it's an entirely different matter if he then follows that with perhaps criminal prosecutions or other uses of presidential power. That, of course, puts us in a whole new and dangerous place. Peter Baker, the New York Times, thank you as always, Peter. His latest article, the one we just talked about, available to read online now.